Iowa, Nebraska comp right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Hope you enjoyed the day with family and friends and are grateful for the many blessings bestowed upon each one of us. All right, let's get to the Iowa-Nebraska breakdown. This a bit of a tradition here at the Voice of College Football, breaking down rivalry games in regards to the common opponent factor, which is not nearly as heavy as it used to be. Think Big Ten Western Division. Iowa, Nebraska in the past have faced 5 common opponents going into this game. They also would often face 1, 2, or 3 of the same teams in the Big Ten Eastern Division. Therefore, we would have many metrics to go by to compare these teams. Do I think that this is effective? Well, I did at that point, but it's still a fun practice and it's still a fun exercise. So we go through it in sizing up just 3 common opponents between Nebraska and Iowa. This appears to be a game in which these teams are coming at this game from very different positions. For Iowa, they had college football playoff aspirations at the beginning of the season. Their offense is so much improved, you would think that they would have been able to challenge for a playoff spot, but disappointing losses, in particular in conference play to Michigan State and UCLA as a significant favorite. And then also, of course, on the Nebraska side, they have finally broken the threshold and broken through with a 6th win to get to bowl eligibility for the first time since 2016. And therefore, Nebraska will be bowling, and they got past a bit of a adversity challenge in a series against Wisconsin in which they had lost 11 of 12 games against the Badgers, but took care of Wisconsin, as we will see in the breakdown, 44-25. This series has been 8-1 Iowa over Nebraska since 2015 with 4 walk-off field goals. And also, though, the one win for Nebraska deprived Iowa of playing in the Big Ten championship game in 2022. Let's get to it with both of these teams going to Columbus to take on maybe the best team in the conference, maybe the best team in the country, Ohio State, with much different performances, but the same result. They both came away with an L. For Iowa, they lost 35-7 to the Buckeyes. They trailed just 7-0 at half, a competitive game on the scoreboard, but the Buckeyes had a 2-1 edge in yardage, made a number of mistakes that kept the game close in the first half, but Iowa was playing pretty well defensively in containing the Buckeyes, but then their backs broke in the third quarter. Iowa had 11 less first downs, got outrushed significantly. Caleb Johnson was bottled up until a late touchdown run. The passing game compared to Ohio State, of course, ineffective, and therefore statistically Iowa was no match for Ohio State, picking up just 5 of 12 third and fourth down conversions, while the Buckeyes, surprisingly against what used to be an elite, stingy Iowa defense, is still a good defense, but nowhere close to the standard of the last 5 years. So the Buckeyes 8 of 13 on third down, and again they broke it open to a 35-7 win. For Nebraska, a very much different game in Columbus as they outplayed Ohio State, and the statistics bear it out for the most part. The Buckeyes hit on some big pass plays late in the game to overcome a fourth quarter deficit. Nebraska's defensive line dominated Ohio State up front. They caught Ohio State at a good time in regards to them striving for the upset in this one, because the Buckeyes had just had a number of shuffles up front because of injuries, and Nebraska almost was able to break through for the enormous upset as a 25-point underdog. Dylan Raiola missed on some passes that could have proved decisive in this one. And there you see again, Nebraska's defense held the Ohio State rushing attack, 2 of the best running backs in the nation, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, to 2.5 yards per carry, and the Buckeyes offense to 2 for 12 on third downs. But Ohio State, again, big plays in the fourth quarter from the passing game, and a goal line stand led the Buckeyes to a 21-17 win over Nebraska. Iowa's been the best program in the Big Ten Western Division for the past 5 years, no doubt. But stretch it back 10 plus years, 20, 25 years, and no doubt it's Wisconsin. They have been the flag bearer in the Big Ten Western Division, which of course no longer exists, but plenty games played between Nebraska, Wisconsin, and as we mentioned off the top of the video, the Badgers have dominated that series, but the Huskers broke through this year. For Iowa, they have had a losing record against Wisconsin for quite some time, as again, Wisconsin has won what has typically been the key game in the Western Division for a championship between Wisconsin and Iowa. But in recent years, Iowa, the better program than Wisconsin, and that has proved out on the field decisively this year. For the first time, Iowa 42, Wisconsin 10. Hawkeyes so much better. Look at the rushing advantage as Caleb Johnson tore up that Wisconsin front seven that used to be formidable year to year to year. But at this point, Wisconsin was number 91 in the nation in rush defense. This is usually a defensive showdown. Iowa put up points in a big way. Look at the yards per play. Positive 4.6 on the Iowa side. They hit on 7 of 12 third and fourth down conversions, holding Wisconsin to 25% with the turnover margin going Iowa's way. Everything went Iowa's way as they were dominant 42-10. Nebraska just got by this Wisconsin hurdle last week. 44-25, close game in the first half, but the Huskers break through after losing 11 of 12 to Wisconsin. They were by far the better team, although statistically nowhere close to the Hawkeye effort against the Badgers. And again, Nebraska breaks through with a 6th win in defeating Wisconsin. Both Iowa and Nebraska took on UCLA, newcomer to the Big Ten, and they both lost. Iowa, a 6-point favorite on the road at the Rose Bowl, go down 20-17. Brendan Sullivan injured in that game. They had to go to the 4th-string quarterback, Jackson Stratton, although he was not the issue. He played pretty darn well. It was UCLA's running game, which came into this game last in the Big Ten in rushing offense, that tore through the Iowa defense unexpectedly as Iowa was outrushed in this game by 131 yards. There you see the UCLA dominance outside of the passing game. Actually, the Hawkeyes were more effective throwing the ball downfield, but they fell in this game 20-17, giving up 9 of 14 third and fourth down conversions to the Bruins. And this is with UCLA fumbling at the goal line and throwing an end zone interception, which could have led to 31 first half points for the UCLA offense. Again, Iowa loses at the Rose Bowl by 3. A few weeks earlier, UCLA went to Lincoln as a decided underdog, and they pulled out the game 27-20. The stats pretty close, although UCLA had the advantage in regards to rushing yardage, passing yardage, yards per play across the board, both rushing and passing, as they held Nebraska to less than 3 yards per carry. And again, UCLA effective on third and fourth down, Nebraska under 50%. Nebraska fell in the turnover margin by 2 and threw an interception on the final possession to wrap it up for UCLA, but that not thrown by Dylan Raiola, who was on the sideline with an injury. Heinrich Harburg with the final interception to wrap it up for the Bruins, 27-20. Put it all together, and the stats are not favorable for either team because they lost 2 of 3. The points, slightly in the favor of both teams. First downs, Nebraska plus 25, Iowa minus 15. That not unusual for this Iowa offense, even though it's an improved version from the last 5 years. Nebraska, a better rushing team, surprisingly, in these 3 games. But this, of course, not just the rushing offense, but the difference between and differential between running the football on offense and giving up yards in the rushing game on defense. And Iowa was smoked by UCLA, and Ohio State was fairly effective as well in that game against the Hawkeyes. Yards per pass, Nebraska getting killed. Iowa, surprisingly, more effective passing the ball downfield than any of the 3 teams that they faced outside of Ohio State, but they were so decisive against UCLA and against Wisconsin. And then again, the third and fourth down conversions, both on offense and defense, are below 50% for both teams on both sides. And then the turnover battle, basically in the 3 games, from a statistical standpoint, inconsequential at +1 for Iowa, -1 for Nebraska. It's more about when the turnovers took place, and Nebraska was certainly hurt by turnovers against UCLA. And then Iowa in turning the ball over in the third quarter against Ohio State. That broke open the game. And then the Hawkeyes against UCLA. Both teams turned the ball over, and that proved decisive. But UCLA could have pulled away in the first half, but turned the ball over. But Iowa, trying to get back in the game in the fourth quarter, turned it over, and the Hawkeyes lost by 3. Again, Iowa owns the series, having outscored the Huskers by 95 points in these 9 games going back to 2015. 8-1 Hawkeyes, and also Iowa is a 5.5-point favorite in this one to move their record to 8-4. It seems to be on the side of Nebraska when it comes to incentive. They just broke through the Wisconsin hurdle, finally won a one-score game against a decent opponent, and now they come into Kinnick Stadium at 6-5, would rather have a winning season, a winning record going into bowl play for the first time since 2016. For the Hawkeyes, they were looking at 10-11 wins, and certainly they've had time to recover from that disappointment of not meeting their expectations this season. They'll need to be boosted by that Kinnick Stadium crowd, and of course, we typically rely on Iowa winning close games. Nebraska loses close games, but that narrative, that stereotype, which has been proven valid, could be breaking down right now as Nebraska may be learning how to win these games, and Iowa could be faltering. Again, they lose a close one against UCLA a couple weekends ago. They were dominant in a slow grinding win against Maryland this past weekend. We'll have our predictions, of course, on Patreon /MarkRogersTV, or as a YouTube premium member. You get my picks each and every week, as well as Steve Merrill's Under the Radar selection and selections, a 12-pack of picks from Matt Zemek and from Steve Dace, right here at the Voice of College Football.